Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Connor Old.
Thank you. I'm Connor Old, and welcome to the 8th annual Connors. We are taking a break from talking about the other award shows, the Academy Awards, the Golden Globes, and now we're going to be talking about my own award show. Every year for 8 years now, I've been breaking down some of my favorite movies, screenplays, directors, performances, as well as some other fun categories in this hour-plus long video, so I hope you enjoy and stick around. As always, you can find different categories in the description below using the timestamps if you want to jump around. But I talk about some of my favorite performances and movies, but then also some smaller fun categories. So it's not exactly like the Oscars, but it's kind of my version of the Oscars, which is why I call it the Connors. One of my favorite videos to do every single year. Give you guys a little bit of insight into my personal opinion, which oftentimes varies drastically with the Oscars, which is why I actually think I'm able to predict it quite well, because I don't have some of those personal connections to performances every single year, although there is some overlap because sometimes the Oscars do get it right. But without further ado, let's jump into my thoughts on the different categories, start awarding some Connors out. No monologue, I'm not Jimmy Kimmel, but let's jump into things regardless. Starting off with the Best Supporting Actress category, my nominees are Hannah Gross, The Adults; Amy Ryan, Beau is Afraid; Penelope Cruz, Ferrari; Vanessa Kirby, Napoleon; and Toni Collette for Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. And the winner is Hannah Gross, The Adults. I usually like to do these videos where I talk about the nominees quickly and then why I ultimately picked the winner. Amy Ryan in Beau is Afraid has some really comical, funny lines. I think she's really able to match the tone of that movie really well, being creepy but also funny and warming to a Beau, but also in a weird kind of a fake, phony way as well that can almost amplify the creepiness because of how sort of nice she is. She's a really standout part of that section of the movie for me, and really a really crazy movie, but Amy Ryan was actually maybe my favorite part of it. Penelope Cruz in Ferrari, almost the winner, didn't end up winning but was close. I loved Ferrari and she's a real standout. She's the most in-depth female character I think in any of Mann's films, and I think Cruz is able to give her that sort of fieriness and that passion that you expect from Cruz, and what she does so great at, which she's also able to deliver in some of the quieter moments, just smiling at her son's mausoleum, for example, and some of the intricacies that she's able to go with back and forth with the driver's character. She's really terrific in the film. Vanessa Kirby, Napoleon, almost a lead actress, but isn't in so much of the movie that I thought would make sense for that category, so I put her here. Napoleon was a movie I liked, but my favorite parts of the movie were the interactions actually between Vanessa Kirby and Joaquin. I think they had great chemistry, and I think sort of her psychological manipulation was really fascinating in terms of how she approached that character and some of the little tricks she was able to do to get us the audience, to understand just how much in control she is over Napoleon. So Vanessa Kirby, one of my favorite actors, gets nominated most years, and Napoleon here, she shows up. And then Toni Collette for Ruby Gillman, which I think is an underrated, no one's really talked about performance, but I think she's an excellent, this is an animated movie, so it's a voice performance, but she gives the character so much depth. She really does give what would be a pretty standard, it is a pretty standard animated movie, but I think her performance elevates it in the sense of giving the mom character real kind of pathos and complexity and unsureness. I know a lot of people felt that way of someone like a Rachel McAdams in Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which she's excellent in, but I actually thought Toni Collette here and Ruby Gillman gave a similar performance, but was able to convey all of that sort of complexities of being a mother in an animated movie, so it was just an extra little bit added layer of difficulty. I love Toni Collette when she plays mothers, apparently Hereditary and this, but I recommend Ruby Gillman. It's not an amazing animated movie, but I do think it's worth it alone for the Toni Collette performance. But my winner was Hannah Gross for The Adults, and The Adults is one of my favorite movies of the year, bar none, and not a lot of people seem to agree. It's a smaller movie, her, Michael Cera, Sophia Lillis, about these young adults who are sort of mourning the loss of their mother figure and sort of communicate by reverting back to some of the performative elements of their youth. And Hannah Gross I had known from Mindhunter, but pretty much when I saw her on screen, she gives an immediate sort of complexity and realness to her character. I think there's a strong sort of underlying depression and sadness coming from, not being able to process her mother, and also sort of guilt that she harbors against some of her siblings. But then she's also able to sort of amp up the sort of kookiness and the craziness of some of the performative aspects. And that's a really sort of difficult factor, because you have to be kind of silly and goofy while also underlying that element of sort of you're depressed and you're grieving, and almost the way she sort of weaves in those attacks and those anger, sort of passive aggressiveness in some of that performative element. It's really impressive in the sense of she's doing it through a prism, through these sort of character voices, but it's almost even more cutting and biting because of Stroman's performance. She was a real standout for me, and if you haven't seen the film, definitely check it out, and she was really the standout. Could be maybe a lead actress, but there's a bunch of scenes of her not in it, so ultimately I put her in supporting. Best Supporting Actor now, my nominees are Chris Messina in Air, David Harbour in Gran Turismo, Robert De Niro, Killers of the Flower Moon, Charles Melton, May December, and Mark Ruffalo for Poor Things. And my winner is Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon. So Chris Messina in Air was my favorite comedic performance of the year. He is so funny, going back and forth with Damon's character, the sort of stereotypical really intense agent, but his ability to sort of modulate his really screaming to some of his smarter, sharper comedic wit sort of jabs that he's able to throw in as well. Just a great, super funny, intense performance. David Harbour in Gran Turismo. If you haven't seen Gran Turismo, strong movie as well, but David Harbour is really the standout. He brings a real sense of weight and history to this man who was a racer but is now a coach and has to sort of muster up his own energy and his sort of masculinity of being a coach and being hard on the guy, really the main racer in the film, but then also sort of show a bit of heart and allow that personal access in some of his backstories and that emotional connection. He is just the perfect coach, and he brings the character so much weight and history, and you feel like this is a real guy who has seen battles, who has been in the car, who knows what he's talking about. Just the sort of weight and wisdom that Harbour brings to his character. Really, really almost too good for the movie. One of my favorites of the year. Charles Melton in May December, I agree with what most people say. It's really a standout performance. I hadn't seen Riverdale, so it was a really sort of breakout performance for me. And I think the May December is an interesting movie because you can either see it as a very funny movie or a very sad movie, or both, which is kind of what's great about it. It is kind of a Rorschach test in that way. And I really did connect, though, with the sadder elements of the movie, which I think connects more to Charles Melton's character as he really takes over the last third of the movie. True heartbreak, true ability to be kind of still look like a boy in a man's body, and that sort of juggling act of that, and how he sort of modulates his performance and how he acts depending on who he's talking to, because of course that's how his character has different relationships between his wife to his children to this new actress by Natalie Portman. Really sort of complex and multitude of different types of roles that's almost within one character. I thought Charles Melton was really impressive. Then I have Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things, which is also a really funny performance alongside Chris Messina. Incredible line readings. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, and his sort of devilish Looney Tunes almost-esque characterization was just brilliant. But my winner was Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon, and you forget sometimes that he's one of the greatest actors of all time, and he did sort of that weird period in the 2000s where he was doing comedies, and we thought we kind of lost him. And then now with the past couple collaborations here with Scorsese, I liked him in The Irishman, but I didn't nominate him. Instead, I actually nominated, that year was Joe Pesci and Al Pacino for that movie. But this year, I nominated De Niro, and I gave him the win because he gave us a reminder of just how great of an actor he was. Quiet and subtle, but even scarier because of how sort of sinister he was in such a sort of monotone aspect in a way. He controls every scene he's in. He's able to reel us in as a viewer to make us understand why Leo's character sort of is appealed to him. He does feel like this sort of booming figure, despite his sort of lack of height or anything. It has everything to do with how he carries himself, the sort of softness that he brings his character, and also sort of that serious cuttingness that he can say with the most almost monotone aspect there. One of the scariest performances of the year, and De Niro reminding us once again that he is still one of the best actors working today. Okay, best first-time filmmaker category, where we talk about directors who have never directed a movie before. This is their first time. Lots of great, interesting young directors I like to highlight every year. So I have Jefferson in American Fiction. I have Michael B. Jordan in Creed 3. I have Chloe Domont in Fair Play. I have Celine Song in Past Lives. And I have Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman in Theater Camp. And the winner is Jefferson, American Fiction. So Michael B. Jordan here for Creed 3. I actually like Creed 3 better than Creed 2. I thought he did an excellent job at bringing some anime influences to some of the fight scenes, while also, so making those scenes entertaining, but then also having some of the more emotional stuff with him and Tessa Thompson be relatable and impactful. And I think because of sort of the Jonathan Majors situation, people have forgotten about this movie, but it was still a strong blockbuster earlier in the year, and Majors, to his credit, did an excellent performance, and Jordan brought that out in him, so you have to give him some credit there for his first time. I'm glad. I think he's going to be directing the next one, so I'm actually excited to see that one. I think it's a good choice for him to do that. And Chloe Domont in Fair Play, really able to bring a sexy thriller aspect. People call it kind of an erotic thriller, which it is, but I really think it's almost closer to a movie like Margin Call, and just how accurate she was able to get some of the business dialogue and make it broader and accessible to everybody, will also understand the sort of psychological interplay between her two leads. I liked Fair Play, and I thought she did an excellent job here. Celine Song in Past Lives, almost gave this as my winner just because I actually think of these people, Celine Song is maybe going to be the biggest household name of the bunch. She really has strong talents as a filmmaker, and Past Lives really able to bring out some of that subtlety and complexity between the sort of everyday of the situation and navigating those emotions. I thought people have been talking about it all year, was very impressive, and almost still a little bit underrated in just how she was able to get us to understand some of the subtleties by instructing her and directing her performers to give them just a little slight nudge here, or make a small edit here to give us a little bit of an inclination towards one side or the other. Will she stay? Will she go? That kind of in between battle, I think Song was really able to showcase here. And then Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman for Theater Camp, being able to take a short and expanding that further and still make it funny throughout the entire part of the movie. That's really hard to do. Oftentimes you see short film filmmakers go and expand their short film into a movie and they sort of run out of material. Theater Camp, I could have seen the 3-hour cut of it. I thought it was so funny, so clever, super well edited too, and still kind of got a strong emotional arc throughout, very resonant for me. And then ultimately though, my winner was Jefferson for American Fiction. And the strength of this movie really is the screenplay, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I thought he was also underrated in a sense of being a great director. There's one scene, I don't want to spoil any part of the movie, but there is one scene in which someone dies unexpectedly, and you see them, and then you immediately sort of snap back into the hospital. You see a shot of Jeffrey Wright looking through a window, then you see the reverse shot, and you see just through the window, so kind of farther removed, you just see a foot sort of shake and then sit still. And then you cut back to a wide shot of Jeffrey Wright sort of mourning that. And it's just that sort of simplistic way of being able to tell a story through visual dialogue. Even though the writing is great, he's also got some of that strong visual sense too. And that just gives me, I think, gives you a strong understanding of why he is a great filmmaker, because he can do those kind of clear visual storytelling moments, not wasting any time, and have us completely understand the sort of gravity of the situation in just a few cuts, and the choice of what to frame, because of course directing, so much of it is what you decide not to shoot versus what you actually do shoot. And I thought Jefferson really understood that and did that well here. So big things for Cord. I hope he makes another movie soon. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'll be eagerly waiting the next one. Then I've got the Best Cinematography category. Robert Yeoman, Asteroid City. Mátyás Erdély, The Iron Claw. Dan Laustin, John Wick Chapter 4. Matthew Libatique for Maestro. And Philippe Lassorde for Priscilla. And my winner, the 2024-3 movie Oscars, is Philippe Lassorde for Priscilla. Bob Yeoman here for Asteroid City, again working with Wes Anderson, but doing it outside instead of a controlled studio situation. Reminds me a little bit more of Grand Budapest Hotel, but just the colors and the design of that film, and how he's able to sort of almost bounce the natural light that you get from the sun off of some of the bright oranges and blues of the set and greens of the set, made the kind of neon colors almost feel more pastel, and I thought really kind of accentuated the heightness of this world. So Bob Yeoman doing another great job on a West movie. Mátyás Erdély in The Iron Claw. Don't know if I'm saying that right, but I apologize if I'm not. Regardless, though, I think this is the most gold movie since maybe The Godfather, although Babylon did a good job last year as well. But I will say that this is such a great movie in terms of those colors and those appreciation of those colors and the sort of continual thematic look of the golds and the yellows and the browns and the oranges kind of all mushing together. Really beautiful looking film, and I really appreciate the commitment to that color palette and making it still interesting throughout every single scene. Dan Lauston in John Wick Chapter 4 in another way, extending the great cinematography we've seen in Blade Runner movies and other past John Wick movies, making it even more neon drenched, even more sort of wet streets shiny. I love the look that what he's able to do for the John Wick movies. I thought he did an excellent job here again. Matthew Libatique for Maestro almost won. Even though I didn't love Maestro, I did really like certain elements of the movie and the cinematography, just throughout the different eras of the black and whites to the color and some of the just landscapes really that he was able to do, slow pushing in landscapes and thinking of them sitting together on the field or at the very end with the water. He really brought a sense of, I think, weight and contemplation to those images, which the movie desperately needed, and I thought he did an excellent job. One of my favorite of his shot films from an excellent cinematographer, but my winner was Philippe Lassorde for Priscilla. I love the movie, I love the design, I love, though, ultimately the cinematography and just how kind of smoky and foggy and hazy it was, so it sort of drowned out some of the brightness of the colors, kind of like Asteroid City, making them more pastel. Beautiful, kind of almost film-like cinematography, which felt very natural and relevant to the era as well, but just having this sort of haziness and the smokiness throughout the entire building gave it a sense kind of a soft touch to make it seem that it's still Elvis's view through Priscilla's eyes of a young girl and how she sees things, and that kind of smokiness and that fogginess I think actually softened some of the images, which made it seem more like a memory, which I really appreciated. And some of the most, my favorite shots of the year of them two kissing, or the shot of him with the red car, or even, just the shot of her walking on the carpet there. I thought, just beautifully framed and positioned and lit and painterly for sure. So an absolutely well-deserving winner. Now we have another category here, Best Needle Drop. So best, music moment in a film. My nominees are No Sleep Till Brooklyn, Guardians Volume 3, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mama Said Knock You Out from Transformers Rise of the Beasts, Everything in Its Right Place from The Creator, Tom Sawyer from The Iron Claw, and I Will Always Love You from Priscilla. And the winner is I Will Always Love You, Priscilla. No Sleep Till Brooklyn is sort of the hallway fight scene in Guardians of the Galaxy, just a badass action scene with a great song. Love the songs in that movie. Mama Said Knock You Out was when Bumblebee comes back at the end of the movie and he says, don't call it a comeback, and then we just hit into it and he jumps out of the helicopter and into the battle scene. Super epic, awesome sequence that had me cheering in the theaters. Everything in Its Right Place from The Creator. I thought that song just perfectly tapped into some of the sort of vibes of The Creator and them sort of floating around, scanning fields in that kind of warship. The song itself does feel sci-fi and futuristic. I thought it was a really sort of well-timed, well-placed, mood-setting kind of a song, which oftentimes we don't see. Sometimes it's cool, badass action, but this is more of a mood-setting one for The Creator, which I thought was done very well. Tom Sawyer in The Iron Claw, really sort of cool montage song. When you hear it, sort of faintly, and we zoom in and push in on Jeremy Allen White's character hearing it, and then we cut right to the wrestling ring, and we sort of go back and forth with them training, and then in the ring. Really well edited sequence to the song as well, and a great song that on top of that. But the winner was I Will Always Love You from Priscilla, which is the real emotional high mark of the movie. At the end, I don't want to spoil anything on this episode, but the context of the song and how the lyrics relate to Priscilla's experience, and the fact that it was a Dolly Parton song and the Dolly Parton version, and Elvis wanted to actually cover that song in real life, but couldn't come to an agreement, so then ended up being Whitney Houston. So there's kind of a meta element to the song itself, and then the lyrics also relating to the emotional journey and arc of Priscilla, and then just an awesome, great power ballad to end the film with. That really sort of brings the waterworks for me and brought the emotional connection to Priscilla home in the sort of perfect bow. So that was my winner there. Best Ensemble, my nominees are Air, Asteroid City, John Wick Chapter 4, May December, and Oppenheimer. And my winner is Air. So Asteroid City here, I love the ensemble of everybody, of a lot of Wes Anderson favorites, but then you have new people like Liev Schreiber or Scarlett Johansson. I think this is Jason Schwartzman's best performance in a little bit of time. I thought he was really fantastic and a bit of a stretch for him as a performer. Sometimes we sort of narrow him down into one thing, of sort of neurotic Max Fisher from Rushmore kind of a type, but he was able to give us something different, and I thought really brought a lot of the sort of grief and pathos to the movie. Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, everybody in the film was really terrific. Tilda Swinton, Jeffrey Wright, all the kids, were amazing. Maya Hawke, I thought, did an excellent job as a teacher. Really great ensemble for one of my favorite movies of the year. John Wick Chapter 4, equally, a bunch of great action stunt performers that are also able to do the stunts, but then the performances themselves, everyone there, Scott Adkins, and of course Keanu once again, and Lawrence Fishburne. So many great actors in the film. In May, December, I love Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore and Charles Melton, but then also some of the other supporting members of the family and the extended family I thought were really excellent and brought the same amount of engagement into their roles, so that it's not just, we're waiting for the scene between Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore. It's like, I don't care if it's Portman and Charles Melton or Charles Melton and Julianne Moore or anybody. Everyone sort of brought their A game, and I thought Todd Haynes did an excellent job with this ensemble. And then Oppenheimer, of course, you have so many great small character actors, but and great big actors, but I thought that was brilliant because you had to take this really 3-hour, super long book and to make it into a condensed movie in 3 hours. It really just helps to know that, oh right, that's Jason Clarke, I know who that is, I've seen that before, he's the interrogator, I don't have to remember names as much. And because we're moving at such a fast pace, I thought it was actually a genius bit of casting to nominate and to cast, a bunch of well-known faces in smaller parts, just so that we're able to understand. I don't have to necessarily know the names of all these people, but I know that, okay, that's Bunny Safdie, okay, that's Josh Hartnett, that's his character. So when they're referring to people, I'm able to clearly and more clearly understand who it is and help me ultimately overall understand the story that they're trying to tell and not worry about character names. But my winner was Air. I thought everybody in this cast was brilliant. Of course, you have Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but really Jason Bateman is secretly the second lead. I already talked about Chris Messina, who I love so much. And then all the supporting characters of Chris Tucker and Viola Davis and Marlon Wayans and Matthew Mayer. Everyone in the cast every part was so fantastic and so well realized, and I was always excited to see someone on the screen in all the different roles. So, we have a bunch of big movie stars, but then you have, some actors I just really like Marlon Wayans or Chris Messina, giving great performances in themselves. So I thought the ensemble and how they worked together and that they felt like a team in this corporate environment to sort of mirror the basketball elements of the movie, I thought that worked super well. Best editing now, I have The Eight Mountains, Ferrari, Gran Turismo, Oppenheimer, and Theater Camp. And my winner is Oppenheimer. So The Eight Mountains I haven't talked about yet. Love this movie. Smaller movie than not a lot of people had seen. And what I love about the editing of the movie is that it's a long movie, 2 hours and 20 so odd minutes, but we're able to cover decades of someone's life, and it has this very poetic, rhythmic kind of editing where we're not exactly sure, particularly in the later half of the movie, how many years have gone by, but we're never questioning where we are in time. We know that there has been time that has passed, and that kind of lyricalness of the editing to make it not confusing and still understandable, but without it making it super obvious by having, big text block of 5 years later, brought kind of this sort of fluid rhythm that I really appreciated to telling this chronicle of the story. Ferrari, you have the great sort of editing between the action sequences of the racing, but then also I think there's some great editing between Adam Driver character and Penelope Cruz and in their fights and the back and forth, kind of a Raging Bull-esque type editing where you have great action sequences, yes, but also great back and forth people in room talking that is almost equally as exciting as the racing sequences. Big support there. Gran Turismo, similarly to Ferrari, except more so on the racing side, I think actually had the best racing sequences of the year, and a lot of that had to do with its editing. Theater Camp, I thought, I mentioned how I could see a 3-hour version of it. I really could, and I thought their ability to use edits to make kind of comedic jokes throughout the movie were very funny, and the sort of ability to use this kind of office style, multi-cam system, looking at the camera, faux documentary style. I thought their sort of edits and cuts between the different shots that they were able to pull off was very funny and adds the comedic elements of the film. But my winner was Oppenheimer, because Nolan was able to take this, in super intense textbook almost like book and condense it down to 3 hours and tell us a story, and I was not confused. And he's the king of the sort of back and forth multi-editing. You've seen that in Inception. Dunkirk, he does it for the entire runtime, and really in that third hour we're recalling events that happened and then going back to the black and white and the back and forth there, and the interrogation scenes were super intense, and I never looked at my watch once. I was totally immersed in this movie. So even though it was a 3-hour long movie, it felt like it was only 2 hours, so you have to give a lot of credit to the editing there. Now, we're jumping into one of my favorite categories I like to do every year, which is Best Trailer, Best Movie Trailer. So these trailers all came out in the year of 2023, and all the movies ended up coming out in 2023 as well. So my first trailer is Beau is Afraid, official trailer. Then I have Killers of the Flower Moon, official trailer. The Killer, official trailer. Maestro, official trailer. And Oppenheimer, new trailer. And the winner is The Killer, official trailer. So Beau is Afraid here, I thought, it was a great combination of the song that it used, while also sort of showing off the craziness and the unexpectedness of that movie. And I thought sold that movie very well. It is a crazy mind trip of an epic odyssey of a boy trying to go back to his mother. That's what that movie is. And it is an exemplary actual showcase of what the movie was. So you have to give props to that. Killers of the Flower Moon, another trailer that uses great editing and music to sort of show the violence and the scariness of the movie. It made it seem even more exciting than it was, so credit there. Maestro, official, I have here official trailer. It's not. It was actually the official teaser. I apologize for that. It was the teaser, the first one. That's only about 40 seconds. But showcases all the beautiful cinematography while also using, a great song from Bernstein himself that showcases really the romantic elements of the film between him and Carey Mulligan's character, and that kind of decades-long span of the two of them, starting off with them talking, back-to-back, guessing a number, and then at the end of the trailer we see them back-to-back as they're older. Even better than the movie in many ways, in showcasing just in this small period of time what's promised to be this really romantic, intense relationship that at times it showcases, but it really is in many ways some of my favorite parts of the movie in a trailer. So I thought, I think that was Mark Wall and Associates. They did an excellent job there. And then Oppenheimer, the new trailer, that was the one where it played a lot in theaters. I thought was excellent, that you sort of got the memes from even before the movie of, I want a 0% chance. What do you want from Theory alone? The back and forth there between Damon and Cillian Murphy's character, or even just the Damon line of "this is the most important thing to have ever happened," brought the sort of sense of seriousness and action and intensity that we eventually got with Oppenheimer. I enjoyed seeing that trailer in the theaters particularly. But my winner was The Killer, official trailer, and I don't think a lot of people saw this one. Feature trailers usually are pretty terrific. This wasn't the teaser, this was the full-length trailer. Super well edited, fast-paced, brought the sort of ticking clock breathing element of the movie into the trailer, showcasing just the intensity that the movie can bring. It's one of my favorite trailers I've seen in the past few years, so definitely check out that one. Out of all of them, The Killer official trailer, 2 minutes of your time, and it will be well worth it. Okay, best score now. I have The Adults, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Asteroid City, Oppenheimer, and Past Lives. And my winner is Asteroid City. So The Adults here, lots of sort of strings and not a lot of music, but I thought did well in terms of tuning us into some of the atmospheric and tone and depression of kind of the movie, while contrasting that with some of the almost large piece orchestral sets that's in the movie, and then cutting that back to some of the smaller piano moments as well. Excellent job there. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. It's a Hans Zimmer score, but it's not like the Hans Zimmer scores you know. It's almost like the Hans Zimmer scores that he's done for someone like a Nancy Meyers. Very sort of up on its feet, light, but still able to sort of transition us in many ways. I think this score is very important to the success of the movie because it keeps it light and it reminds us that this is still a fun, enjoyable movie. And that when we're going from one scene to another, oftentimes Kelly Fremon Craig will institute Hans Zimmer score, and that kind of lightness, sweetness on your feet in many ways is exemplified through a Zimmer score. And then I have Oppenheimer, Ludwig Göransson. Maybe almost a little bit too much score. It really is wall to wall with score. Sometimes I wish for some more quieter moments. That being said, there is some beautiful leitmotifs that continue throughout the film. They're very, earworm and catchy. Past Lives, which I thought was a brilliant kind of way of keeping a very simple piano melody, but bringing out some of the emotion. Another credit to Celine Song, who was able to actually not use too much score, but when she does use score, really make it impactful and add to the emotional swell of the movie. It's definitely a score I've been listening to a lot of. But my winner was Asteroid City, who is from Alexandre Desplat, who has been nominated probably at the Connors a few times now, like he has at the Oscars. But I wanted to give him the win this year because, of course, I love the movie, but it was different than Desplat's scores in the past. He usually keeps it pretty light and airy and almost fairy tale-esque, and lots of strings, and there's a softness and a sweetness to it. And this one, he just uses what sounds like, I'm not a musician, but almost like a xylophone, really high pitch, ding, 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 which I thought was really well suited to the kind of heightness of the story, but also kind of the, if you can really hear its frequency, you'll appreciate it, part of Wes Anderson's movies, because they're not for everybody. I didn't like French Dispatch, I didn't like I Love Dogs. I thought this was a real comeback for Wes Anderson. And still, people, aren't really going to get on board with this style of filmmaking, and in many ways, like the score itself, with its very high frequency. Sometimes you can't even hear the score because it's in such a high frequency as it escalates, which I thought mirrored the particularity of Anderson and his vision, while also mirroring the kind of emotional revelations of the film itself, when I've been listening to a lot, because it goes from really, crescendoing high of those xylophones to sort of these deep bass drums of almost like a marching band. Very unique score, very different for Desplat, and I thought really accentuated the film well, so I had to give it the win. Now the best design category, which encapsulates production design and costume design and makeup and sort of the overall look of the film that's not cinematography, is the best design category. I have The Adults, Asteroid City, The Eight Mountains, The Holdovers, and Priscilla. And my winner is Asteroid City. So The Adults here, I think, was sneakily very excellent. I've seen this movie 4 times now, and I love just how particular the setting is of, I guess it's like upstate New York. It feels like a real town. The costumes, what they're wearing, I think mirrors very well with the characters and how they're feeling. There's this strong sense of place and time in this movie, which is very rare for what is perceived as, it's a small indie movie. But there's a real lot of craft and understanding, even just of the house that they're in, and some of the nooks and crannies of it feel like a real place, and that's what I love so much of the movie, and that a lot has to do with the credit to the design of the movie. Then I have The Eight Mountains, which does a similar thing, makes it feel very realistic. You have the beautiful sets of the mountains, but then also so much of the movie has to do with this sort of small house and this hut and the small intricacies and where everything is placed. The geography of the film is very clear and understanding, and I think about that. I think about the main sort of house, and I think about the plot of land that they're building on. So much of it is about the place and the design and the production design. So I had to include The Eight Mountains here. The Holdovers, Alexander Payne did an excellent job at recreating that kind of 70s movie of the paper chase, or something like Dead Poets Society tries to do, although that's an 80s movie. But regardless, I felt like Payne was able to take me back and transport me to that era, and I thought the design, production design, costume design, and overall tone and atmosphere of the movie was a big reason why I was able to sort of feel like it was from another era. Then Priscilla, just the actual recreation of all of the elements of Graceland, I thought were really well done. And once again, the geography and some of the costumes and the makeup and the hairstyling was really excellent. But my winner has to go to Asteroid City because Wes Anderson does it like no one else. He makes it truly feel like this small little town, like this place that feels kind of like a play, which of course adds to the meta elements of the movie. And I love the design of Anderson's movies, and I think Asteroid City, of just the sort of the comic elements of the highway that stops halfway through, or even just the martini vending machine, are these small little creative elements that only Anderson could bring in his movies, brought to life brilliantly by his team. Okay, now another one of my favorite categories. This is the best small part. So male or female, doesn't matter. Not enough for a supporting actor or actress nominee, but still want to show some support. I have Antoine Reinhardt for Anatomy of a Fall. I have Patti LuPone for Beau is Afraid. I have Ty Mitchell for Killers of the Flower Moon. I have Matt Bomer in Maestro. And I have Casey Affleck in Oppenheimer. And my winner is Matt Bomer for Maestro. So Antoine Reinhardt's here for Anatomy of a Fall. He was the prosecutor in the film that is constantly sort of throwing jabs and confronting Sandra Hüller, her character Sandra, and it was great and devilish in a way because, you know, we're trying to side with Sandra's character, but then also makes some really interesting points. Very antagonistic, very good. Patti LuPone in Beau is Afraid, or LuPone in Beau is Afraid, who's a great theater actor who I haven't seen much of on film, and I thought she was brilliant in her very Speechify-esque role, where she really comes in the third act of the movie and totally nails it, and we understand why Beau has all this anxiety and this fear, because she's probably the scariest part of this really weird, crazy movie. She has a strong menace that she brings to her character, which I thought was excellent. Ty Mitchell in Killers of the Flower Moon, who plays the sort of doer, who sort of does a lot of the bombings or the killings for Leonardo DiCaprio's character with the big mustache. Just one of those guys with an incredible face, and I wanted to recognize him because he was able to really feel like a cowboy and feel the dirt and the grime and the livingness and the whiskey drinking of that kind of an era. Then I have Casey Affleck in Oppenheimer. Very different performance for Casey Affleck, almost villainous, but calm and cool with this clear psychopathic, background of his mind. I thought for this really couple scene performance, he was excellent in it. But my winner was Matt Bomer in Maestro, who was Leonard Bernstein's sort of first male lover that we see in the sort of critical scene of Bernstein introducing Carey Mulligan's character, Felicia Montenegro, to his character in, I guess, what was the theater, and then also when they meet each other in the park. I thought in these very sort of couple, 2-3 scenes in the movie, he brought more chemistry than Cooper did with Mulligan, and felt like, actually, no, maybe in another era they were supposed to be together, and brought a real sort of sense of, even just that one scene in the park, of understanding through his eyes, but saying something different, of being able to go, oh, this is your new girlfriend, oh, right, we can't be together because this is the era, oh, this still, though, hurts me and pains me, and I don't like it, but I kind of understand it. Tells you all of that through his face in those couple scenes. Really brilliant. I'm excited to see what he does next. Now this category is best monologue, so best one scene, unbroken take of a speech from a character. So I have the Lion King speech in The Adults, the daughter speech in Air, the Willie Gay origin story from The Burial, Hook in Me speech from The Covenant, and My Terrible Joy speech from Ferrari. And the winner is the daughter speech from Air. So the Lion King speech in The Adults, one of the funniest parts of the movie, at a poker tale, where Michael Cera's character is talking about the first time he really experienced death, and there's a funny kind of reveal in it there. The Willie Gay origin story is Jamie Foxx in The Burial, when he's telling Tommy Lee Jones of the plane of his background. And, I think of Foxx as an actor who almost always brings sort of the big and the loud and the funny and the intense, but oftentimes you don't see him really be quiet and soft. And as he's telling the story, it's easy for him to really sort of, it would be easy for him to muster up a lot of emotion and make it emotional, but he doesn't. And for so much of the movie, he is the performative, over-the-top lawyer in the courtroom. And this scene reminds us that, no, he's still a regular guy, relaxing on a plane, thinking about fondly about his past and what made him become a lawyer. It's a genius bit of acting by Jamie Foxx. Hooking me from The Covenant. Jake Gyllenhaal, who's known for his intensity, gives another really intense speech, but not over the top like he can be in something like Nightcrawler. Just very still, doesn't move, looks in the camera. Richie barely moves the camera, and he talks about how he has this debt that you would understand, and he's got this hook in him. And it's just a super intense, no blinking, staring kind of a speech that brings us and helps us understand the weight of why this movie must continue, because he has that hook in him and just that beautiful line reading. Stuck with me throughout the rest of the year. And then My Terrible Joy in Ferrari, which is the part where Ferrari's talking with his drivers, and he's saying, I once was a driver, and if you're going to race for me, you can't brake. And, at the end of the day, we all understand that this is my terrible joy, that this is a great piece of writing, but this is a very dangerous profession, but this is a profession that I chose, and it brings me so much joy, and that if you're going to race for me, you have to, you can't brake, essentially. And that kind of intenseness really helps us understand why Ferrari was such a beloved figure. And I think Driver was able to embody and channel that in this beautiful monologue here. But my winner was the daughter speech in Air, which was done by Jason Bateman. And I think, Jason Bateman in the first part of the movie, you're like, okay, I guess he probably did a favor for Damon and Ben Affleck because they're buddies or whatever. He doesn't really have much of a role. He's kind of the number 3 in the movie. And then boom, he gets a speech and he blows you out of the water. And everyone thinks about the Damon speech in the third act of, telling Michael Jordan he's going to live past everybody and be, a true legacy. But Bateman's character gives, I think, a much better speech in his subtlety, in his ability to conjure up emotion, and in pretty briefly and concisely help us understand where he's coming from and how, we're on Matt Damon's character side. We know it's going to work out. We want him to take the risk. But at the time, it was a scary thing. And Bateman's got a daughter. And and Sonny made the decision as a man who doesn't have a daughter who he has to see on every Sunday. And it's really heartbreaking emotion. And that's why you cast Bateman for that scene. And it reminds you that's why he's such a great actor. That's why he's in this role. That's why someone of his caliber had to be in that role to deliver that monologue. And it's just a heartbreaking monologue in a really excellent movie. Probably my favorite part of the movie. True, too. Then I have Best Moment in a Film. My nominees are When Falk Learns Sonny Went to the Parents in Air, Am I Doing It Right in Asteroid City, the airport scene from Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, the stair sequence from John Wick Chapter 4, and the fight scene from The Killer. And my winner is the stair sequence from John Wick Chapter 4. So Falk Learns Sonny Went to the Parents. This is from Air, and it's a great scene, as you can see on YouTube, of Chris Messina just freaking out and going crazy and hurling all these great funny insults to Damon's character, and Damon sort of egging him on. And then, but there's certain levels to it because it's a 4-minute scene and it's not just yelling, it's yelling and then it's calm down and then it's back to yelling again, and it's very funny and very dramatic. And one of my favorite parts of the movie, that and the speech, Air, definitely enjoyed. Am I Doing It Right from Asteroid City? I think if you really love the movie like I do, this part is the emotional crux of the movie. And I loved Asteroid City, and I didn't love The French Dispatch, and I didn't love I Love Dogs. And I was wondering, is Wes sort of gone away from his emotional storytelling and is just interested in form and style? And I was glad to see that this is what I love Wes Anderson, because the first part of the movie is all funny jokes and form and style and intrigue. And then boom, with this scene, he hits you with an emotional heavyweight. And that's what I love in movies like Darjeeling Limited and Rushmore, where because of his style, the emotion of the movie sneaks up on you until it does hit you. And I think with this movie, the thesis kind of the movie of Jason Schwartzman's character talking to Adrian Brody, am I doing it right? How do I play this performer? Do I just keep on doing it without knowing where it's going to go? Yes, I'm going to step aside for some air. I don't think you'll get any. That sort of beautiful dialogue back and forth, I think, is the real emotional crux of the movie. The thesis of the movie, the thesis why I like it, and the emotional wallop that I've been waiting 10 years for from a Wes Anderson movie. Then I have the airport scene from Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Part 1. I guess although they've gotten rid of the Part 1 title. I thought this was just a brilliant piece of filmmaking, not even really an action scene, but almost just like a thrilling Ocean's 11 almost heist type scene of the Che Wiggum and the police and their characters trying to find Ethan Hunt and them being confused in the airport, and then the sort of close-up magic of Cruz and Haley Atwell and their back and forth as we go through the airport and following people. Just a thrilling, exciting, fun action sequence, if you would even call it an action sequence. The fight scene in The Killer, which is also an action sequence, but is also maybe the best fight scene I've seen in years, and just how brutal and intense and hard-hitting. Every punch you felt. My winner was the stair sequence in John Wick Chapter 4, but The Killer has even almost more of a real strongness and that clumsiness, and it wasn't have the choreography and the dance of John Wick, but it had the realism and the groundedness and the hard-hitting punches. My favorite part of The Killer, probably, maybe aside from that opening, but The Killer is a movie with a bunch of great scenes. But my winner was the stair sequence in John Wick Chapter 4, because it was a great action scene, but played like a ballet, plays like a dance. Very funny, very Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin-esque, going up the stairs and then falling all the way back down them again, and just the sort of waves of people that come out of everywhere to attack John Wick. But also, I thought, the best part of the movie, because it reminds us that he's vulnerable, that he can be hurt, that he is tired, that he's at this point where he just wants to get up these stairs. And I thought that's a secret part of the John Wick movies that they don't always nail, is that John Wick is still human and that he can feel pain. And my favorite parts of the movie are when we actually see John Wick lose a little bit, because it makes us feel even more better when he does win. So a clever, physical stunt type performance that was very funny and very action-packed in John Wick Chapter 4. Then the best screenplay category, I have The Adults, Dustin Guy Deffa, American Fiction, Cord Jefferson, Asteroid City, Wes Anderson, Ferrari, Troy Kennedy Martin, and The Killer, Andrew Kevin Walker. My winner is American Fiction, Cord Jefferson. So The Adults here, Dustin Guy Deffa, a movie I really enjoyed, and I loved how he was able to create some of these performative character voices / performance songs that tell us and instruct so much of understanding these adults' relationship. Asteroid City and Wes Anderson, very funny jokes, very creative film in itself, but then also some beautiful lines of emotion, particularly in the last part of the movie. Ferrari, Troy Kennedy Martin, I mentioned the Great My Terrible Joy speech. There's just some great, succinct, beautiful Michael Mann-esque dialogue in the script as well, and I thought it was sort of a really interesting conceit of, let's tell the story of Ferrari and his life in this really pivotal week or month, a couple of months in his life. And then The Killer, Andrew Kevin Walker almost won this one. I thought it was so funny, so creative, all the little different lines that he repeats and mantras that he repeats to himself. Very funny, very memorable. But my winner was American Fiction for Cord Jefferson, because I thought it was the funniest movie of the year. So clever, so witty. I loved all the different lines. They made me laugh out loud. And, you know, even rewatching the movie last night, I just kept on laughing at all the different lines and callbacks of Tyler Perry or some of the... And then also, I think, you know, the genius of American Fiction as a movie in general is that it's able to criticize a certain type of movie while also secretly being the type of movie that it wants those types of movies to be. And usually when we see a TV show, you know, I've seen more emotional complexity in American Fiction than I've seen in 10-hour TV shows. And that's what I love about the script, because it was able to condense these moments and tell really almost two stories at once. This funny story about Stag Arley and that kind of social satire, while also being an emotional story about death and grief and a family. And I was able to do two things at once and sort of two movies at once. And it's kind of proving its own thesis of being a movie that is kind of a stereotypical Black American movie that we've seen in media, but then also providing us with something different in the family dynamics that we don't see too often. So it's kind of a secret, brilliant, genius screenplay, because it can be funny, but also being emotional. And I think if you connect to the movie, you connect to both elements of the script. And I thought Cord did an excellent job there. Then the Best Director category, coming up here to the end. Dustin Guy Deffa in The Adults, Wes Anderson, Asteroid City, Michael Mann, Ferrari, Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer, and Sofia Coppola for Priscilla. And my winner is Wes Anderson, Asteroid City. So Dustin Guy Deffa here for The Adults. I mentioned how I loved his script, but I also loved his piece of directing just because of the performances he's able to get, the creativity of the different performative scenes, the fact that he's able to weave in some of the insults within those performances scenes. And then also, like I mentioned with the design category, just beautiful houses and costumes and tone, and really toes this line. Understands poker too as well, and those scenes and what that tells us about the characters ultimately. Character focused director. Not flashy visually always, but the fact that you have great performances and a great script and great design, and then at the end of the day you go, well, it comes down to the director as well. Michael Mann, Ferrari. I really love Ferrari because of his ability to do great action sequences, but also have the great in-between personality, kind of Shailene Woodley versus Penelope Cruz family dynamic that's going on. And I thought overall, giving great performances in pretty much every performance in this movie, Michael Mann for Ferrari gets a lot of credit. Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, which is actually not a top 5 movie for me, but I wanted to include him in Best Director here because I thought it was just a monumental achievement of giving these great performances in everybody, of making these really smart choices, like I mentioned earlier, of getting really famous people in these smaller parts so that you don't know where maybe the twist is coming or who's going to come in later on in the movie, or also help us remember some of the smaller character scenes and character names as well, combined with the sort of overall story and the weight that he's able to bring, mixing in with some of the visual elements in the score. A true directorial achievement. Sofia Coppola, Priscilla, almost the winner. I love Priscilla, and I thought Coppola, once again, I loved her last movie, On the Rocks. It was my favorite movie from 2020, and once again, in her bag, a different type of a movie than On the Rocks, maybe a little bit more traditional to her type of a film, like a Lost in Translation, but so beautiful in just her ability to help us understand Priscilla and her thoughts without using dialogue. She's such an excellent visual storyteller because she's able to communicate to us and communicate her actors to give them a performance to help us understand how Priscilla is feeling in moments of uncertainty, and then also help us to continue want to know the mystery and understanding the psychology of the relationship and how much of it is love and how much of it is a codependency and how does she feel, and just the framing of making her feel small in all these big Graceland sets. And it's just these small smart decisions over and over again that keep us engaged of Priscilla and her viewpoint and her feeling of being trapped. And then my winner, though, ultimately was Wes Anderson in Asteroid City. I love the movie, and I thought Wes did a brilliant job at crafting, like I mentioned, the emotional arc of the movie, but then also his brilliant creative little world. And I thought he came up with a great ensemble this time around, and the sort of elements and the complexity and the deepness, I'd say, arguably, of the sort of layers of it, of that it's a play that looks like a film that's also a TV version of that play, and then we see the behind the scenes there. I actually think those sort of complex layers help us understand the performative nature of the thesis of the movie, which I ultimately came away with of being, am I doing this right? Such a perfect pandemic movie in many ways. I think Anderson is able to craft just a brilliant visual, performance, writing, creative, great score, all the elements of the movie I loved. And it's a movie I can see myself rewatching a lot of times, and maybe my favorite Wes Anderson movie. So I had to give the credit here for Best Director. Now, the final 3 categories, starting off with a big one here, Best Actress. I have Sandra Hüller for Anatomy of a Fall, Phoebe Dynevor for Fair Play, Natalie Portman for May December, Haley Atwell for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, and Kaylee Spaney for Priscilla. And my winner is Kaylee Spaney, Priscilla. Sandra Hüller here for Anatomy of a Fall. What a standout year for her for this and Zone of Interest. I thought she was brilliant in Anatomy of a Fall. Sometimes you believe that she didn't do it. Sometimes you believe that she did do it. She's really able to give us nothing and give us everything at the same time. A real complex performance. You know, I liked her in Toni Erdmann, but I hadn't seen really a movie that she'd done since. So I'm glad that, I saw another great performance from her. Phoebe Dynevor in Fair Play, I thought was a real breakout for her. I don't think a lot of people saw this movie, but it's on Netflix. It's a strong movie. I had some issues with it, but Phoebe Dynevor was not it whatsoever. She's able to understand and deliver some of the complexities of the relationship and the frustration that she has, while also being stressed out at work, and then the sort of third act turn of her character I really bought. She was able to do all these different types of performances, sweet and sexy and innocent, but then ruthless and cunning, and she's able to kind of do it all, and it was really impressive star-making performance for me in Fair Play. Natalie Portman in May December. Natalie Portman is sometimes a hit or miss actress for me, but I thought she really nailed this sort of parody in many ways of an actor, and that final scene of the movie, and without spoiling it, is so crushing and so brutal, and that's everything to do, I think, with Portman's character. And that last scene really hit for me because of how Portman approaches the character, where she approaches it with a certain level of camp and humor and social satire of acting and the performative role, but then also kind of the depth and pain of the situation that plays out like a murder mystery, but at the end of the day, you know what happened. Then Haley Atwell in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, which is just an awesome action performance. You know, we've seen Haley Atwell be great in other things, but she's the best part of this movie, out acting Tom Cruise, which is hard to do, but she is very charming, very clever, and I like the fact that she's just kind of a thief. She's not this human person, so she makes mistakes, and it doesn't feel like, oh, she's the clumsy girl who has to, get saved by Tom Cruise. She can handle herself, but she can also feel like a real human being. So she almost reminds me of an Indiana Jones in that regard. I thought she was really great in the movie. But my winner was Kaylee Spiney in Priscilla, and like I mentioned with the Coppola nomination for director, Spiney I thought was a real great find, and she's able to tell us so much on her face. She has to keep that sort of composure while also freaking out, while also being a young girl, and then she's able to kind of span that from being a young girl into, I guess, her later 20s. We really see this great transformation, and you buy her, in my mind, of being this sweet, innocent girl, but then also eventually finding her own womanhood later on in the film. And then also these sort of small, sort of subtle facial movements and adjustments to help us understand she can't freak out right now, but she is kind of freaking out, and she's unsure of what to do, and she feels like she's by herself, and sometimes it can seem like almost a blankness, but I really thought she was able to give everything she needed to give and communicate everything she needed to do in these subtle, smaller performances. And she has real chemistry too with Jacob Elordi. And think of that scene of the two of them in bedrooms frequently enough, of not trying to want to rock the boat too much, but still wanting to have that confrontation, but then realizing that she'll never get access to a certain part of Elvis's life. So much complexity and performance, and real standouts, and I'm excited to see her in Civil War, and I remember seeing her in Bad Times at the El Royale, but I think she can be a really great leading lady, and I'm excited to see what she does next. Now, the Best Actor category, my nominees are Jamie Foxx in The Burial, Chris Pine in Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves, Adam Driver in Ferrari, Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers, and Michael Fassbender in The Killer. And my winner is Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers. And I haven't talked about The Holdovers too much here. I really enjoyed the movie. Almost made my top 10, didn't though, but I thought this was just the perfect Giamatti role. But speaking about some of the other nominees here, Jamie Foxx in The Burial. If you haven't seen The Burial, excellent movie with Tommy Lee Jones. He really is the true lead of the movie, and like I mentioned with my Best Monologue category, is able to give a softness and a humanity to his character in like those plane scenes or certain scenes, with the other lawyer in a bar. But then also when we see him perform at the stand, he is over the top and great in all the best ways, and like the camera is just following him around, you can't help but captivated by him. If you put on The Burial, watch the first scene. If you don't like the movie after that, turn it off. But I'm pretty guaranteed that if you see that scene, you're going to be hooked in like I was for the rest of the movie. Chris Pine in Dungeons and Dragons, I thought was a great leading man movie star performance. Oftentimes, in the early 2000s, we've talked about who the best Chris was. And Chris Pine is definitely getting up there, I think, for me, as one of the best Chris's, because he brings a real vulnerability to his character. He's the planner. He's not anyone special. But he's able to toe this line, which is a really difficult line that modern blockbusters do not understand, which is the line of being charming and sweet and funny, but then also being able to give some of the emotional pathos of the movie and not undercut it with humor. And Pine does that, and the movie does that at every turn. We know he's a great movie star, but sometimes Pine, I don't think, has done this great of a performance since maybe 2009 Star Trek, and I still think this is maybe his best performance, so I wanted to shout out Chris Pine here. Adam Driver in Ferrari, I think you can easily get distracted by the kind of impression of the Italian accent he's doing, and you go, oh, this is kind of weird, he's speaking in English, but he's in Italy. It's like, but once you get past that, I think it's a total understanding of the energy. That this is the performer, Adam Driver, who's in his late 30s, early 40s, who's playing a man in his late 50s, 60s. He's doing 20 years, essentially, of transformation, and you totally buy it. And it's like, the details aren't necessarily 100% right. The accent, of course, is maybe not 100% there, but by the end of it, you don't care. And some of the best parts of the movie are him, just with, like I am, with his hands behind his back, looking at the races, growling, grinning, his presence and the way he carries himself. Some of my favorite parts of the movie is not the dialogue, it's just seeing him walk around and look at the racers go by. You would think, oh, I'd want to see a movie about the race car driver, right? And actually the genius of this movie reminds you and lets you know that actually the fascinating part is Ferrari and his presence, and you understand why, through Driver's performance, why he was such an enigmatic character and why people were drawn to him. And it's just the physical part of his performance, the way he stands, how he carries his hands, the slowness of the way he walks, the intensity that he brings in his scowl. So much. Really impressed by Driver here. Michael Fassbender in The Killer. A classic Fassbender performance that he's playing kind of a psychopath and is great at that, at repeating those mantras, at keeping a very sort of cool, level-headed aspect of the movie, which I think adds to the humor, but also some of the intensity. Fassbender was made for this role, and he's perfect as the killer. But my winner was Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers, because I think this is the Paul Giamatti performance. I think this is going to be the one he's going to be remembered by. I think it is a classic Giamatti performance. He knows these guys down to their very depth. He went to a prep school. He was in this world. He was in academia. And this guy just feels like we ripped him out of someone's diary from the 1970s. Gives him a real sense of humanity, of someone who's funny, but is also using some of his humor and his wit and his cynicism to hide from the fact of some of his past failures. And Giamatti is able to give that performance so much complexity. Really brilliant, and I hope he wins the Oscar, although I don't think he will, but I hope he does. And now, here we go. The Best Picture category. My nominees, 10 nominees are, in alphabetical order, not ranked 1 to 10. The Adults, American Fiction, Asteroid City, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, The Eight Mountains, Ferrari, The Killer, May December, Priscilla, and Oppenheimer. And my winner is Asteroid City. So starting off with some of the nominees, The Adults I mentioned, really funny. Don't even understand necessarily why I love the movie, which is why I love the movie, because there's, I think, a lot of true realness and honesty in some of the dialogue and some of the performances. It feels like real people and real siblings, and that's really difficult to do in the sort of what can seemingly be a small, light, indie movie, hour and a half, but I think has real emotional resonance without it being too over the top and dramatic. Very realistic. Very emotionally impactful. American Fiction, like I mentioned, able to do two things at once, be a smart social satire while also being a strong family drama with great performances all around. I have it here mostly though because it is the funniest movie of the year. I loved American Fiction. Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, I mentioned, I think it's an ultimate blockbuster movie. Entertaining, good action sequences, okay-ish villain, but Hugh Grant, I think, makes up for that in its own right, because he's so sort of smarmy and slimy, but works so well at that. Manages to have a sort of great comedic humor that's so funny and keeps it light on its feet. So many sequences I love, like them interviewing the dead people, or even just the Jonathan scene at the beginning, so funny. But then also I also buy into the emotional scenes. And then also I love Dungeons and Dragons, their whole team vibe. I really do feel like them as a team. I'd love to see a sequel. Hopefully we'll get one. The Eight Mountains is a movie that I don't think a lot of people have seen. Definitely check it out if you haven't. Essentially about these two men and their life in the, I guess it was the Italian Alps, building this house, and then as their sort of life goes around, childhood friends, and how their dynamic kind of changes and evolves depending on how they see each other and how there's a deep love for each other. Even though there's not as much interaction throughout the years, there is still a sort of connection that they have, and it really feels like you've lived a lifetime in these 2.5 hours. Ferrari, really intense racing movie that's also really intense drama about Ferrari and him managing different elements of his life and reconciling the grief of the people that he's lost, whether it be his son or some of his racers, and how that affects him. The Killer, also a super funny movie, while also being really intense. Love the sort of serialized nature of it. Fincher is great at giving us a awesome serial killer, I guess-esque, but really hitman procedure. Cool, stylish, also really funny. I'm going to be hearing these lines for many years to come. Great script. May December, I mentioned, is both a funny movie but also a sad movie, where I connected really more to the sad elements. I really do think it is one of the most devastating movies of the year, particularly through Charles Melton's character, and the ending may be the best of the year. Then Priscilla, I have Kaylee Spaney and Jacob Elordi are genius in the movie, but this really comes down to Sofia Coppola and her direction and her ability to tell us through visual storytelling how Priscilla is feeling at every step of the way. Great movie. Oppenheimer as well, I loved, particularly the first 2 hours. The third hour I don't actually absolutely love, but the first 2 hours are so terrific and exciting and building up that bomb. And I love all the different complex themes that it's trying to tackle. I thought I did an excellent job at it. And my winner, ultimately, Asteroid City, which I've talked about and has won some previous awards here. I think after losing Wes for a couple of years, and well, a couple of movies really, almost a decade, I'm glad to have him back. I also loved his his Roald Dahl shorts that were on Netflix, but Asteroid City is my favorite movie of the year because it is everything I love about Wes: the creativity, the humor, the beautiful design, while also having great emotional payoff that really connected with me. One of the few movies where I saw in theaters, and then a couple of days later I went back and I saw it in theaters again and like couldn't stop thinking about it. A comfort movie for me, and I think one of Wes Anderson's best, maybe his best. But that's about it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the Connors this year. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on what your favorite movies of the year were. I'd love to hear that in the comments down below, your favorite performances, all that fun stuff. A regular Oscar video will happen next week on Monday, where I'll react to the BAFTA awards and discuss some of those and what that means for the Oscar race and some of those winners. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.